welcome everyone to Twitter Spaces on Thursdays with Blue Jay. And today we have Sabera protocol. We'll be learning about how they're building out Web3 payment infrastructure for subscriptions and recurring payments. We have Edison here, the CEO of Sabera. How do you come up with the idea of Sabera, and what does Sabera do?
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. My name is Edison. I'm the CEO of Suberra. I think how about let me just begin with what Suberra is at a very high level, right? So Suberra is it is a payments infrastructure that allows businesses and individuals to accept payments anytime and anywhere. So people can basically use Suberra to accept payments from anyone. So whether the user is using let's say a self-custody wallet like MetaMask, they can use Sabera as well. We can connect with exchanges like FTX and Binance to enable people to pay from that. And people can basically pay for anything as long as the merchants accept that. So initially we started with subscriptions, which is I think what most people know us by. But we also do one-time payment. So it is very suitable for things like SaaS-based services subscriptions, or it could also be used for one-time payment of online checkouts, e-commerce kind of things, as well as you can also buy things like NFTs with Suberra as well. So it is like a payment gateway to make it really easy for merchants to just integrate once, and then they can accept payments from anywhere. So that's what Suberra is about. Okay.
Nice. Yeah, and I guess Edison, if you don't mind to add on as well, how do you start building Sabera, and how do you get into crypto? Let's get to know you as well.
Okay, sure. So Sabera I think what me and my co-founder Zach is trying to do is to really make it easy for people to transact on Web3. So initially, right, the idea of Sabera started when Zach and I, we were trying to pay for everything with crypto. So we were together. We were friends for a long time, like back in the DeFi days when we were farming Wi-Fi and sushi. So we started during that time. And then I think on and on, we started to kind of delve into more data stuff that we want to subscribe. So I was trying to subscribe to Delphi and Denson. And Zach was trying to subscribe to some other services like CoinStacks Pro. And we realized that those services, they still require credit cards for payments, which is really silly, right? If you think about it, they are businesses that basically serve the Web3 crypto natives, but they are still accepting credit cards for payment. So it is something that we were just thinking, okay, is it really that they don't believe in crypto so much? We try to dig for the real reasons. And it turns out that the reason is because the infrastructure for payments are just not that well developed. So we have things that are DeFi farms and lots of kind of DeFi strategies, people optimize yields here and there, but the underlying things of payments is not really cracked on. There's lots of issues there. So that's why Zad and I, we wanted to start a payments processor company to make it really easy for merchants to accept payments, no matter they are doing a subscription business or they are doing a one-time online checkout.
Nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, actually, if you don't mind, Sherry and Jeff, you guys can introduce yourselves as well, especially Jeff, because you're not always on the spaces. Sherry's always here.
I can start off. I'm Jeff. I'm currently working as CEO at Blue Jay Finance. Prior to coming onto crypto, I was a software engineer. Started two companies. Basically had experience in emerging markets. Building up software for other companies in the region. And how I got into crypto was really because I wanted to free myself from banking infrastructure. I was originally from a country called Myanmar, and the financial infrastructure was collapsing back in 2021. And crypto was kind of the savior and the only way for me to free myself from all the restrictions that the central bank of the country was imposing its citizens on. So that's how I got into crypto. And I actually found out about last year when you guys started working on recurring payments, and I thought it was a fantastic idea, and actually really happy to be here on the spaces together with Edison.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And Sherry, if you don't mind, to introduce yourself as well to those who are new here from Sabera's side.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Sherry, one of the co-founders and CEO at Blue Jay Finance. I guess my foray into crypto was actually sort of from the payment side of things, which is why I think I'm particularly excited to have Edison here from Suberra on our spaces. So I actually used to work a couple of years on Google Pay, particularly for India, which is a market that saw a pretty big transformation from cash to digital payments straight, effectively skipping over the credit card era that you may have seen in other more developed markets. And that was truly, I guess, innovative at the time to be able to have an app pay bank to bank, and even like people who are selling juice on the streets of Bangalore were actually accepting payments on their mobile phone. So anybody with a phone could basically get access to digital finance, which was pretty cool. But even with this innovation within Web2 fintech, there were a lot of challenges. So what recurring payments was actually pretty much not possible for a while under what was called UPI, or Unified Payments Interface standard in India. So you actually couldn't do what Suberra and these protocols can do, because you had to basically make an entire library change of this standard that was basically being run by the National Payments Corporation of India. And then the other thing that is particularly painful in traditional payments is actually making things interoperable between different countries. So even though like Google Pay existed in India, Singapore, US, like you couldn't actually pay across those different regions, because the APK for the app is as well as the rails, the fundamental rails of how money moves is actually very different. So that's really to say that payments is a huge opportunity, I think, having Edison here to talk about what they're doing at Suberra is something that I think I'm personally very excited about. And, one of the reasons why I got into crypto.
Wait, sorry, Sherry, do you cut off or?
Oh no, I'm done. I just I think just a quick intro and stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Edison, moving back to you. I understand you worked at Zilliqa as well, and I guess if you can elaborate a bit, how did that inform you to build Sabera, or how did those experiences help you with your current journey as a CEO?
Okay, I think we need to kind of take a few years back on the very beginning of time with crypto. So I first saw crypto in 2015. Back in those days, one of my friends was mining Ethereum, and so he just basically introduced us to, hey, just mine Ethereum on your laptop, you're going to get some money, and we're like, oh God, are you crazy? And we just didn't really think too much about that. But if you are wondering, my first exposure to crypto, that was during then. But as a user of crypto, I really started during 2017, and the reason is as follows. So back in those days, I was in grad school, and transferring money to myself in the US is something I have to do every semester. And every semester, I recall my pocket money was say $5,000, and I have to transfer myself from Singapore all the way to US. The issue there is that at every time we transfer, there is a huge fee that is being incurred. I think not many people have this experience with wire transfer these days, but because right now the infra is very good with TransferWise. But back in those days, right, it can cost you 3% to transfer yourself money in the US, and that's crazy. So, and it also took between 3 to 5 days, which was bad, but it's not that bad until it happened with one semester where there was basically a delay of the remittance. It took me more than 3 weeks to get the money, and I was literally broke in the US. I have to borrow money from my friends, and it's not because I don't have money, but because there was something that is went extremely wrong in the payment rails, that somehow the payments have to basically hop through 3 banks from Singapore all the way to New York and all the way to Pittsburgh, just for me to get the money, which is I think which is when I was trying to find a much easier way to transfer myself money, and that's when I chanced upon crypto. So I can basically buy, let's say, Ethereum, buy Ether in Singapore and transfer myself in a matter of in less than 1 hour, and withdraw to a bank account in US. So that is a number one use case of crypto, and I still believe it till today. I don't think there's any other wire transfers out there, even with TransferWise, that can win the settlement speed of crypto transfer. Even if you use TransferWise, it's going to take you a few hours to get your funds across the world. But if you can send, let's say, USDC or Ether to anyone around the world and you get set up within seconds, I think that's really incredible. So I've really wanted to do this payment space from the very beginning. Then I think fast forward to Zilliqa. So Zilliqa was my first company after grad school. I joined them as one of the first 10 team members there. And as an early team member, you have to do everything, right? So you have to do everything from engineering to developer marketing like scoping up POCs for companies which are trying to use blockchain for like lots of reasons. Like it can be like supply chain reasons. It's very lame, I think, if you think about it. And so I was there for like 2 or 3 years and was leading a team of up to 10 people. Then that's when I decided to do Suberra, because I still feel that, I mean, Zelica is great. It is a company that really challenges me a lot on and gives me a lot of opportunities. But I don't think that it is working on the payments side of things, which I originally believe in, or like I would say that payments is the one that brought me into crypto space from the very beginning. So that's where we get started with Suberra, and I hope that answers the questions.
Yeah, it did. And yeah, it's sort of like paying tribute to how you got started with crypto. Jeff, you got anything to add?
Yeah, no, I'm just actually a little bit triggered when I hear Edison mentioning the infrastructure being great now. Recently, I also actually went through a very similar experience. I'm not going to name names on which bank I use, but basically I learned about what is a particular document called Swift's MT103 document, which I honestly did not need to learn about, but I had to learn about it because one of the funds that we actually sent to one of our vendors in Europe actually got lost in between banks. So both of the, the sending bank that we use as well as the recipient's bank basically deny having access to the funds. So we basically looked into the MT103 document to figure out where the money went. So just for the rest, curiosity, MT103 document is basically like an Etherscan transaction link where you can see where the money hops and where it ends up. But yeah, just wanted to point out that the remittance infrastructure and banks kind of still sucks.
Nice. Okay, Edison, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to continue to complain about it because, I mean, the thing about banks is that, like, I mean, when your payment gets stuck, right, the most annoying thing is that, like, no one really knows what's happening. So especially when it comes to, like, intra-bank kind of, like, transfers, like the one that I talk about, that my transfers has to basically go through 3 banks to get to where I am in Pittsburgh. So if I try to contact someone in Singapore, like a bank in Singapore, they can't tell me exactly what's wrong with it. They have to check with someone else, and they have to check with someone else again. So this process is very long, and you really have no control over your situation, and that's very frustrating, right? So, like, I think not many people really have that kind of like the misfortune of being stuck in an overseas country without money. But I think that's a very kind of like very impressionable event for me, for myself.
Okay, nice. Thanks for sharing. And if you can move on, I guess can we get your take on the current crypto payment landscape? And yeah, what part of the landscape you're focusing on, and what made you focus on that specific one?
Okay, I think that for crypto payments, there is, I mean, of course, like people can pay with anything. I think that's the magic of that. You can pay with anything from like stable coins to like, let's say, like Blue SGD when it's out. Or you can even pay with, let's say, like any tokens, right? Like Ethereum, or like you can pay with Bitcoin as well. So in our case, we actually don't really like differentiate between what the users wants to pay. But of course, initially we think that most of the payments these days is going to be USDC. So even if like, I think that just as a matter of fact, for most businesses, they price the product in US or fiat basically, but people can basically pay with, like, say, Ethereum, or like, say, paying with like Bitcoin for their services. There are like many kind of like payments in the world. So actually payments is, I would say, it's very interesting to me because like it is how we basically transact with each other in the real world. So you can kind of like do one-time payment, and that's like very great for like, say, e-commerce. Let's say if you're trying to buy like a hoodie or like a kind of like a handbag, or you can even do like recurring subscriptions for things like Delphi Digital's membership, or you can pay with like Nansen with subscriptions. And you can even pay with like what we call as usage-based pricing. So that means that if you're using, let's say, Dropbox, and you are using like a storage of, let's say, like you're using more storage than they have in the free plan, then they may charge you for usage. So for every GB. Another example could be that for your phone bill, right? So let's say you have like phone plan for 100 minutes, and you went over that 100 minutes of call time for that month, and they start to charge you, let's say, for every minute that you exceeded. So that's what we call as usage-based pricing. In the real world, all these things are being covered because like we have a lot of companies like Stripe, PayPal, or like Braintree that's covering that. But in the crypto space, there isn't anyone who's like trying to solve that. So which is where Suberra comes in. Suberra connects anyone, and helps them to be able to make payment for any merchants easily. So any merchants can use Suberra for things like subscriptions payment, can use it for in-game NFTs, access passes, or it could also be like e-commerce on the metaverse. So like we are really just trying to target like people who are in this space, let's say like businesses and ambitious entrepreneurs. Let's say that you are doing like a content and you would like to get paid for that. You can consider using Sabera to receive your subscription payment. If you are, let's say, you're trying to sell merchandise, maybe you can sell like a GM cap or like Webme hoodie. You can start to sell that online and you can integrate Sabera really quickly and get it up and running on your e-commerce store. So that's what we're trying to solve with what we do.
Okay, nice. And yeah, I guess in these areas, what kind of companies have you approached so far? And yeah, for in terms of, let's say, stablecoin subscription rails, and how are you guys onboarding your first few customers?
It is so for companies wise, we are looking, so like generally there are two kinds of like businesses out there. So there are the businesses who wants to use it to collect payments right away. So those businesses are companies like Nansen, like Delphi, they have like a service that they can immediately monetize, and they can use Sabera to start accepting payments for that in a very short amount of time. We are approaching all of these companies. We think that they have like immediate synergies with us. We can get them up and running really quickly. So that's what we are doing with the targeted outreach in Sabera. And for the second kind of like merchant, what I call as a platform, or let's say like a platform or marketplace. An example could be Airbnb, Grab, because like what we're trying to do with them is that we're trying to integrate with them so that they can help other people to collect payments. So if you think about it, like how Airbnb works is that Airbnb integrates with a company, let's say Stripe, to start accepting payments. And for that payments, you can pay out to anyone who is on the Airbnb. And as a user, let's say if you're trying to get a hotel stay in an Airbnb, there is like during vacation, you can pay with anything online, let's say your credit card or let's say your local payment methods, anything that's basically supported by Airbnb. So what we're trying to do is that we're trying to become that Stripe equivalent for platforms, in a way that we are trying to integrate with all these platforms so that people can start accepting payments for their customers, so that we can basically empower like a two-sided marketplace. Those like I would say that those businesses are a bit more long term because we require a lot of integration with them. But we see that this interest has been picking up a lot as people started to think about more creative ways about monetization. And I think the platforms and a marketplace are going to be the next big thing.
Actually, I want to extend that question a little bit further as well, and also the points that you mentioned. Through Sabera, what kind of efficiency, I mean, if I'm a business, right, like what kind of efficiencies can I expect out of using, let's say, stablecoin payments as a payment rail, as opposed to using something like Stripe or PayPal?
Okay, so Suberra is like a complementary service to Stripe or PayPal. So if you're an online business, you can integrate Suberra alongside with Stripe to start accepting crypto payments. So let's say that you are trying to sell like a hoodie, or let's say you have like a e-commerce clothing store, right? You can basically accept payments from anywhere. So whether the person has a credit card or whether the person wants to pay with crypto, we aim to be able to help that business achieve that. So that's where we are quite different from Stripe and PayPal. And in fact, what we're trying to do is to create the same features that you can expect from Stripe. So meaning to say that being able to handle different payment use cases, one-time payment, subscriptions, or it could even be usage-based subscriptions. We're trying to empower that. Secondly is that so once we can enable all these kind of payment methods, then we can compare with ourselves with what is available in crypto today. So many things in crypto are currently what we call like we call it like so like how payments experience work in crypto today is that if the store is using Coinbase Commerce, they will give you like a QR code which you have to scan and make payment. So that's because in crypto itself, like everything is a push-based payment. So push-based payment means that the sender has to explicitly make the transfer. An example of push-based payment could be crypto, where we have to sign transaction every time. It could also be your favorite PayLah application that you have to send transaction from your mobile to your friends. But what Suberra basically like specializes in is creating a brand new primitive to enable pool-based payment. So this means that once you are on the platform, you can give a merchant the authorization to deduct money from your account, and we do that really securely for users. So we have this thing called periodic allowance that lets them set up their spending limit. And once authorized, then the merchants can basically charge the user, let's say, every month for payments. So this is a huge step forward for subscription, because like before, businesses will basically chase their customers every month and get them to pay their invoice. So there are companies who are using Coinbase Commerce that they literally send and poor intent to chase email and say, oh, please pay up for this month's subscriptions. If not, your subscription is going to expire. And there are also companies which basically they do invoicing. So they use a network, let's say Request Finance, to give the merchant an invoice towards the end of the month, and the sender has to pay up the invoice. It is not automatic. So what Sabera is trying to do is that we're trying to really make it automatic. So in the future, there could be a lot more seamless experience between how user pay, and just make sure that there's an easy way for people to accept payments, or let's say pay businesses without having to even log into the platform.
Awesome. Thanks. Anthony, you can carry on.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jeff, for adding on. And yeah, I guess if you can elaborate also on what are you bringing on more businesses in, or is it just purely crypto native businesses, or are you bringing on non-crypto businesses as well? And yeah, how's the BD like in these areas? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's a good question. So in Sabera's case, right, our mission is to enable people to transact easily and securely on the web, and we are starting off with that on Web3. The reason being is that we think that many businesses today are still not accepting crypto payments, and some of them, you might be surprised, but they actually sell data services or research reports to people talking about blockchain and the future of metaverse and Web3 3.0. But when you try to subscribe to them, then you realize that they don't accept crypto payments, which is kind of silly if you ask me. So our first mission is to make sure that the big names in crypto basically enable crypto payments. And I would say that this is something that we are looking to really achieve in a short amount of time. We think that our integration is going to be top notch, so people can integrate us in a very fast amount of time, and they can use it to tap into any customers all over the world, right? So whether the customer is on FTX, Binance, or they're using one of those many self-custody wallets, they can pay on Suberra guestlessly. So that is our initial approach. And once we solve for that, then we'll basically look into ways to enable non-crypto natives to accept stablecoins or crypto in general. So for right now, our BD effort is still going to be very focused on Web3, because we think that for us to really convince people outside, we need to make sure that the crypto people accept crypto payments first, because that is the number one use case of crypto.
Edison, I have two related questions to follow up from there. So number one is is there still actually a big universe of crypto service providers that aren't actually accepting crypto payments today? Because that surprises me a little bit, because you are providing a service in that space. So wouldn't you actually put your money where your mouth is when it comes to your own payment rails? That's my first question.
Sorry. Can you repeat that again? Because I was fidgeting with my phone.
No, it's okay. All good. I appreciate the honesty.
It's because I'm having some audio issues, which is why I think it's now loud and clear. I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh yeah, actually, I don't know if you noticed, but I actually was having trouble with Twitter on my phone for 2 minutes, so I wasn't on the spaces for just a split second, but I'm back. I couldn't hear you for a bit, but we're here and we're good now. Okay, just to repeat the question. Actually, I have two questions, but I'll just start with the first one. But the first one is, how big is the universe of Web3 service providers that are currently not accepting crypto, right? I guess I would be a little surprised if it's huge, because wouldn't these guys want to put their money where their mouth is and actually accept crypto as a payment for their service?
Yeah, so I think that they definitely want to accept crypto, but there's many issues there. So I think first of all, some of them might. So when we actually ask them, there are some reasons. So reason number one is that it is difficult to accept payments, which is, I would say, is true, because before Sabera, there wasn't an easy way to integrate payments easily, which is why we are working towards that. Reason two is that they don't really know which platform to basically integrate with, right? So let's say that if a merchant integrate, let's say FTX Pay, then they don't really know for sure whether is that like a right decision. What if like people try to pay something else? Why not Binance Pay? So they have all these kind of dilemmas there on how many things do they want to like, which kind of like crypto payments do they want to support. So there is like this decision paralysis that makes them think about that it's so difficult to accept crypto. So, and the final reason is something that I feel it takes a bit more time and regulatory clarity, which is some merchants do not really know how to recognize the revenue on crypto. The accounting is a mess. Like say if you're accepting revenues with a USDC, then you might want to be able to backdate your accounting so that you can pay the right taxes. And it gets even more complicated if you're accepting like a payment, let's say like a non-fiat based payment like Ether, Bitcoin, which is that when it comes to accounting, you have to mark it to the price that you receive it on. So let's say when you receive Bitcoin when it was at $8,000, you need to mark it as such, even though that the price of Bitcoin is like $21,000 today. So all these kind of things, like this general administrative things, is really troublesome for merchants. So which makes me think that sometimes it's not because they do not want to accept crypto payments, but because the difficulty of doing that is really quite huge. And yeah, I think that usually this companies like American companies, so maybe Sherry, you might be more familiar on that than me.
In what way with American companies?
Like the taxes and the tax situation in the US is not, yeah, it's really troublesome.
Yeah, I guess it depends on who you talk to, but yeah, I guess what you're saying makes a lot of sense. So it's not so much of a barrier in terms of motivation, like, like seeing the value of actually providing the payment and getting, more and more customers actually their preferred payment method, but it's more around a educational as well as a integration type of hurdle.
Yeah, so I would say it's really like a mix of like educational and like regulatory, as well as like the ease of integration. I think the good news is that I would say many kind of like regulatory things are clearing up these days. I think like a few days ago, I was like looking at this chart of like the G20 stablecoin regulations. I think many companies in this, many countries in the G20 has been working on stablecoin regulations, which is promising because that will clarify a lot of situations like how do you recognize revenues in like USDC, for instance. So we hope that all these things will take time. I think it's gonna become a lot more mainstream since more people are working towards that, and that's something to look out for.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's always kind of like this where you got to have the builders and the experimenters go out there, and at some point then there's the frameworks that are kind of put together to make it easier for other people to start actually thinking about solutions to some of the main problems. The other question I have for you is now looking at the non-crypto segments, right? Like, what are some of the like beachheads or like starting segments do you think make sense? Like, some of the things that come in my mind, which we, sometimes talk about a little bit, is like poker and gaming, right? Because even some of the people I've asked before, like, how did you get into crypto? Like, some of them said that they actually started using crypto, like Bitcoin, actually for poker settlements online. So I'm wondering, like, how are you thinking about like for the non-crypto segments, like, which kind of merchants would you potentially go for that, maybe more accepting of like a new form of payment, or maybe have an overlap in customer base between like crypto native people and maybe like, gamers or poker players?
Okay, I think like so we were talking about this like the other day, right? So like Sherry, so like I think the thing that crypto can do very well that traditional payment rails can't do is escrow payments. So escrow payments could be for like many things. It could even be like, let's say that you are taking the, say whether like Luna will be like $100 in 1 year from now. So that I mean that kind of escrow bet between Locon and who is the other guy? I forgot his name, but that was like a very classical example of like an escrow payment that you have to park your money somewhere else, and depending on the rules of the outcome, then we'll automatically dispense the payment to someone else. So, and another example would be poker, like you say. So before the game, everyone will kind of like buy into a stake. So people can buy into say 1,000 USDC into a game, and after like one whole night of games, then we can basically set up. So it can be a situation that maybe someone needs to propose a settlement and put in the correct amount, and you can even get 2 or 3 people to sign it off, just to make sure that the allocation is correct. Yeah, so yeah, I think without that escrow payments, is some things are just really hard to do. So, and I think that all these things expand beyond just like betting onto like an outcome in the future or on poker, but it can even be for businesses as well, right? So sometimes business will get things into like an escrow. Let's say that if I try to buy over a company, like let's say if I try to sell a company for let's say $5 million, before you sign the document, then what some people want to do is to make sure that the buyer has that $5 million. So what they do is that they basically put the money with a lawyer, and the lawyer as an escrow. And once the sale goes through, then they will dispense the payment to someone else. So what if like in the future, right, these smart contracts and crypto payments can take over the job of lawyers, that there won't really be a need for escrow payments in that sense. People can kind of like put money into like a smart contract, execute the share transfers agreement, and automatically get the USDC transferred to their account. I think that would be a very good kind of scenario that we can look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those who don't know, like trade financing is a huge industry, right? Like it's basically like, as you said, like there's this whole like process where if there is a buyer and seller in different countries that don't know each other, right? You want to make sure that, one or the other is good for the money. So, creating a trustless system requires this whole entire process. But if everything is actually done crypto native, then you could just actually have something like a smart contract actually manage something like that. So I think it's actually a pretty big and a very old school industry that, maybe one day some of these processes can actually just expedite this a lot more. And I know that, poker may sound like a silly example, but I could definitely say that anybody who runs a game, like let's say a home game, right? And there's 8 people that are playing, that person is basically like custodying people's money, right? When they're, dispersing payments, it's extremely manual and there's no good solution today. So it's just an example of how you can use escrow payments, but it's something that it's still a pain point that's not really solved in traditional finance.
Yeah, another escrow payments that we are just thinking of could be like a check, right? So let's say if you're trying to send like 1,000 people money, the not so good approach is that you're trying to get their addresses and send it to 1,000 people, which is really not scalable. So what you do is that you can put it into like a smart contract for escrow and let someone else claim the money. So they can claim the money when they have like a secret, and they can claim the money from that escrow account, which is actually not that different from let's say like a cashier's order, which I think today many people are still using like a cashier's order for things that are typically of like large amount. Let's say if you're trying to buy a house, you will need a cashier's order to make sure that like you as a buyer have the sufficient money. Yeah, so I think escrow payment is just like I think it's going to be one thing that crypto can do that traditional payments can't really do so well. Another thing that I was thinking of is this thing that we call like logic-based like payments. So in TradeFi world, sometimes like payments are not just by time, it is by condition. So an example could be that let's say Sherry, you and I we put in money together to buy like a new house, and we rent that house out. So what we want to make sure is that like we kind of like get the renter every month when the person who's like staying there pays the rent, and then we split it equally between ourselves, and then we transfer money to each other. So this is like a logic-based like payment, because in the event that the person don't pay the rent, the other person is not supposed to get the renter. So it's very dependent on the cash flow. So having this kind of like programmable cash flow is great. I think that some time back you guys had Frank from Superfluid on the call. So that's something that I think is going to be achieved easily with Superfluid, that you kind of can open like a stream of payment, and you can dispense it to someone else. So like payment streams is just one example of a payment that can be done on crypto but cannot be done so well in traditional payment rails.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I feel like, there's a couple of ways you can grow with crypto payments, right? I think number one is you enable more and more people merchants to accept crypto because you're basically selling the customer, right? You're like, you have a bunch of these users, they're being paid in stable coins, they like to use stable coins, and they would spend at your place with those stable coins if you enable it. So there's that kind of user angle. But I think the other angle you talked about, which I like, is like, how can we just not just take like Web2 payments or how payments has worked and just put it on the blockchain, but actually like re-envision like what we can actually do, right? And I think that's where the programmability of payments, I think, is really interesting, where you can, parameterize different things outside of time and have like certain logic of how transactions are made afterwards. And, I think streaming payments is one example of it with Superfluid, but there's, for sure more that you can do. And of course, like escrow payments, right? So I think there's a lot of, ways that we can almost like, I guess, transcend how payments has worked in the real world with things that are actually built with blockchain native payment primitives.
Yeah, there are like lots of things that we can do with like programmable like payments to enable not just like time-based payment, but like logic-based as well. Yeah, for sure. So it could even be like, I think escrow is just like really fantastic. You have like so many things you can do. Even let's say performance-based payment. So let's say that we need to hit like a certain percentage in a certain kind of like score in a game to be able to get like a higher tier reward. That's possible with crypto because we can enable the programmability from day one. It's not that easy on non-crypto areas.
I was just thinking of something super silly from my childhood, but my parents actually used to give me an allowance depending on the grades that I got in school. So you could actually make programmable allowance payments for kids depending on what grade they received, which is put on chain. But maybe that's too Black Mirror, but that's something that just suddenly popped in my head around that.
I don't really like. Yeah, I was like, then I wouldn't really have any pocket money left. Yeah, because I was doing really badly in school.
Yeah, but good point, Sherry, because now Singapore has bursaries as well. So, and those are for students, like top 15% of the cohort. So if you can make it programmable where it's dispersed to those who do well, that'll be quite cool. But yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, I guess moving on with the questions. I guess how does Sabera compare with other stablecoin payment infrastructures in the market at the moment?
Yeah, so Suberra, what we do is that we have like things that are different from other like payments infrastructure. So today I would say that the dominant incumbent is Coinbase Commerce. So Coinbase Commerce is the one that 70% of the crypto people use. I mean, just based on my estimates, they use to accept crypto payments. We are better than So let me just kind of rephrase this. So what we are different from Coinbase Commerce is that we enable not just like one-time payment, but we also enable for recurring payments as well. So you can use it for like subscriptions, you can use it for like memberships and NFTs. When you subscribe to something, you get like a subscription NFT, which is cool because you can use that to get your access into platforms like Discord, Notions, or Telegram. Payments on Suberra is also guestless. So we enable people to pay without paying for gas. How we do that is because like these days there's like a new way of like doing permits on stablecoin and meta transactions. So as a payer, you can sign some transactions to allow Sabera to deduct money from your account, and Sabera will take care of the rest. We'll run automation bot to charge the account so that we can make sure that the merchants get the payments on time. And this is something that Coinbase Commerce cannot do today. And we also have like lots of merchant-friendly feature to make sure that merchants will streamline their operations. We have like things to enable them to make sure that the wallets that are paying them are legitimate and they are risk-free wallets. We have like features to enable merchants to easily enable marketing discount codes and trials. So they can issue their own discount codes, their own promotional codes for things like Black Friday so that they can increase their sales and conversions. And everything is done with like security in mind. Things are on-chain, on smart contracts that is audited by the top auditors. So it is quite different from the current payment infrastructure because like we have like more features, we have things that do what the incumbents cannot do.
Nice. And yeah, if you don't mind, can you elaborate on you were mentioning Notion, Telegram, and Discord integrations for payments. How does that work? Just
Okay.
curious.
Yeah, so that's like something that we have, which is cool on the subscription side. So let's say that you are trying to subscribe to a service. It can be Nansen or it can be Delphi, right? So once you subscribe, what we basically mean is on-chain NFT that has like a time expiration to that. So it means that this NFT is going to be valid for say 30 days. While the NFT is valid, you can use the NFT to access any integrations, such as like Telegram, for instance. So I'm not sure how many of you actually use a tool called CollabLand, which is really popular in the NFT community. They use it to basically get access to the community so that they make sure that only token holders can access the platform. Using the same tool, we can enable entrepreneurs to create paid groups or paid communities where they can get some content. So just imagine that you are someone who is trying to run a community of like-minded individuals, and you require of them to pay you $10 a month to moderate the account, to give like content to the group, or like to give like trading signals, for example. So you can use Sabera to enable that. So they call that recurrent payments with Sabera, so that you can do the paid Telegram group. Or you can also like if you're like a writer and you want to write for like a living, you can use Sabera to get your Notion pages. So Notion pages you can leave it private with and put it behind like a token gate, so that only the subscribers can get access to the platform. Because to access those platforms, you need a valid NFT, which is a time expiration NFT, and that's only going to be valid if you pay for that. Because if you do not pay for that, then the NFT is going to expire in let's say 30 days.
Yeah, actually, the NFTs that expire, that's really like new in the space, because now I guess a lot of NFT projects have the issue whereby they've already launched and made a huge sum initially, but there's no way for them to sustain their profits beyond resale. And yeah, like having memberships which are NFT memberships which expire, that's really huge. And I guess it can even reach out to onboard merchants who are interested to use NFTs for, I guess, verifiable memberships for FMBs and all that.
Yeah, so this is a very, I would say it's like a developing new narrative out there, because like when we think about NFTs today, they are like this cute Pudgy Penguin cute NFT that you have on your profile pic. But it is not just like it's not just like a JPEG, right? It can have like logic based there, so you can have like time bound expiration to it, so they can do things like renter. So for example, I can kind of like, let's go back to the house idea. Let's say I bought a new.
Yeah, hello.
Is it just me or we lost Edison?
I think we
Yeah.
lost. Let me just ping him.
Okay. For the space.
Actually doing so well right now.
Wait, Edison, sorry.
Oh.
Can you answer that again? My bad. Yeah, you cut off for quite a bit.
Okay. So where was I lost?
I think the last we heard was, at least for me, the last I heard was Pudgy Penguins.
Oh,
Now you
okay.
get to
Yeah. So
Penguins
Yeah.
again.
like NFTs today are just very simple. Simple in the sense that it is just like, okay, we mint an NFT, and it's going to be there for like perpetuity with a, let's say like an image that you generate on chain, which is like kind of like what you're saying on my display pic with a Pudgy Penguin. But what I'm saying is that NFT can be a lot more powerful than that by introducing a lot more programmability to it. So imagine that I can start to do like renter NFTs. I can rent it to you. I can send it to you. I can set an expiration date on how I want that NFT to basically expire. By expiring, I mean that you can't use the NFT anymore and you have to return it back to me. So this kind of things can be inbuilt into NFT contracts, and we are just using that interface to do the subscription, because it is the best use case there, right? That we like a lot of these tools that people build for NFT communities to get access to Discord, to Telegram, etc. But what we can do is that we can even add more logic to make sure that this NFT will basically expire. It's no longer going to be valid unless you pay for that renewal subscription. Yeah.
Nice. Sherry, got anything to add? Yeah, but if not, I can continue. Sherry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Anthony.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the next question I have is, would there be direct on and off ramps for users who are interacting with Sabera, and yeah, for businesses to collect and pay and collect their stablecoin revenue as well?
Yeah, I would like to answer that about Suberra, but conscious of time, because we have 5 minutes left, do you want to open it up to the floor for AMA?
Yeah, sure. That's fine. I guess we can type that down later or put it in a tweet. But yeah, for the floor, if any of you have any questions for Mr. Edison, yeah, you guys can just request to speak. Yeah, if not, it's just garner a bit of courage and request to speak, answer questions. Okay, nice. We have Michael with a fellow Pudgy PFP. Michael, can you try speaking?
Sorry, I was still on mute. Thanks.
No, all good.
Hi, Edison. Thanks so much for explaining about Suberra. It was super interesting. And Blue Jay, thanks for hosting this session. I have one question. I'm actually a former payment gateway founder here in Singapore. I was curious, given that you're a Singapore entity, probably you want to start selling to Nansen, which is also, I guess, a Singapore entity. How do you go about it from a regulatory perspective? Are you currently applying for a license under the Payment Services Act, or how are you doing this?
Yeah, so when it comes to like payment in Singapore, right, they are currently the scope of work is like pertaining to fiat to crypto on ramps. So if you are doing between fiat and crypto, you definitely need a license. But for what we're doing right now is that we are a technology company. We do not handle the fiat on and off ramp. So what we do is that we work together with licensed people to do it. So companies like MoonPay or like Circle or StraightX to do it. So long story short, because we do not handle the on and off ramp, we are okay for the time being. And as a business, let's say like as a business in Singapore, if you receive stable coins as a revenue, you can just like declare that as a revenue, right? So you can declare anything as a revenue. You can declare cash as a revenue. So you can declare your stablecoin as a revenue. There's no conflict there as well. So I think many people are kind of like scared by the regulations, but like if you read the fine prints, they actually like stipulate and trying to protect on the on and off ramp mostly.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Michael, and thanks for the continuous support. And actually, if anyone has any more questions, you can request to speak. But in the meantime, we really prepared POAPs for this Twitter Spaces, and if you were to go over to our Discord page, you can send this. There'll be a Google form available for you to drop a proof, a screenshot that to show that you have attended our Twitter Spaces, and we'll airdrop you the POAP afterwards. But yeah, if you guys don't mind, just go over to our Discord. For Edison, we'll send you the link. No worries. But yeah, so any more questions in the meantime? Okay, we have Ivan. Hi, Ivan. You may speak now.
Ivan from Request Finance here. I'm curious to figure out I'm just kind of curious to understand how do you exactly, early on you mentioned that you allow sort of like users to pre-approve transactions of a certain size, right? But how exactly do you do that to replicate something like a standing order or a gyro payment for those of you who are in Singapore, right? That's equivalent to a standing order. How do you do that exactly?
Okay, so let me just give it like some background on payments today or any kind of like ERC20 tokens. There are two kinds of approval out there. So you can do one-time approval, which means that you either give like someone the ability to spend $10,000 from your account, or you can do like unlimited approvals, which is like I think what some people actually do with like DEXs when you're trying to swap tokens. What Sabera do is that we introduce a new primitive called primitive periodic allowance, which allows people to give allowance to that contract, and the contract will get how much money we can spend from the user's account every month. So you can think of that like instead of giving $10,000 to the user directly, to the merchant directly, this time around you give the $10,000 of approval to a smart contract, and the smart contract will enforce that the merchant can only withdraw, let's say, up to $2,000 every month for the next 5 months. So the periodic allowance contract is one that we actually spend a lot of time to build, and we are still building that, trying to solidify it and get it tested and audited by people. But once live, then it's going to become a more secure way for people to give approval. You can think of it as like a second level check on top of just the one-time approval.
And so like people don't have to approve that transaction again and again.
Yep, precisely. So that is actually what we are trying to do in the space, right? That there are a few ways to do recurring subscriptions. One is that you ask your subscribers to give unlimited approval to you, and you can just charge anything you want. That's kind of like what some competitors are doing right now, which I should not name. Then, but what we do is that we enable and we added another layer of check, just to make sure that the merchant can only draw up to the amount that he can draw every month, without the user having to approve the transactions every month. So like I see that you're from Request Finance. An example could be that like automatic invoicing. Someone can like kind of like approve that. Let's say I approve up to $2,000 every month, and then once the invoice gets sent across, we can automatically charge the user and make sure that the money is actually transferred to the recipient.
Right, but how do you stop that? Like, is it possible for the user to withdraw their disapproval anytime, or?
So it isn't really like a withdrawal, because like it's the approval. The USDC or any stablecoin that you approve, it sits with your wallet. So
right, but so that's the question, right? So then does the subscription continue in perpetuity, and how do you stop that subscription, right?
You have to. So there are two ways to stop it. One is that you explicitly cancel that, and the second way is that you will have to. I mean, if your account run out of money, then the subscription stop. Yeah, so it's very similar to how you will. So like mental model wise, you can think of it like a Revolut card, because like you have to make sure that you have money in Revolut, so that you can pay for your online subscription online.
Right. But I guess the difference is that I can stop a gyro payment, or I can cancel a subscription anytime, right? Whereas for this one, it's a little bit different, isn't it?
Oh, you can still cancel it anytime. So you can like on chain, and you know what is in fact better than some models out there, because like cancellation is an on chain transaction. You can just revoke the anytime. So there's no more of like trying to call and like wait on the line and make sure that your customer support gets to your support ticket and cancel a subscription. You can do it yourself. Right. Like cancel it by sending an on-chain subscription. So everything is.
But I mean, okay. So I think my question was like, how do you tag the subscription, because the subscription is linked to an agreement, right? So for example, let's say it's $1,000 for 6 months, right? Can you program that so that I can't cancel it before 6 months, or is that not possible at the moment?
For the moment, we do not have the ability for merchants to say that the users cannot cancel for 6 months. The users always have the right to cancel anytime. So you can even like subscribe for the first month, and then you straight away cancel that like 1 day later. It's also possible. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
But if the use case like become a lot more clearer in the future, why merchants want people to subscribe for 6 months without canceling it, then we might consider supporting that. But for the moment, we are kind of like anchoring it to what that the current market is actually doing. That means that they can do online subscriptions for, let's say, Spotify, and then you can cancel that anytime.
So I mean, I guess the use case would be like packages, right? So if you subscribe for 3 months, the price might be higher per month. And if you subscribe for, let's say, 12 months, the price will be lower per month. So that's the reason, that's a key use case, right?
Yeah, I think that could be possible. Yeah, that could be possible. But usually in those cases, then what they will do is to do like quarterly subscription or like annual subscription, right? That means that you pay one time for 1 whole year, and they give you like a 20% off. Yeah, so I think it's still quite different from like making sure that you cannot cancel for like 6 months.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Wow, that went really deep. But yeah, thanks Ivan for the amazing question, and Edison for answering. Yeah, I guess we're overextending, but just a reminder for those who want to collect our POAPs, which might or might not have anything to do with our token in the future, kindly just go over to our Discord, which is in our pinned tweet, and yeah, you can fill out the Google form, show proof that you attended our Twitter Spaces and received the POAP. Yeah, but yeah, thanks Edison for your time. It's been an hour and slightly more. Yeah, we learned a lot from you today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, and thank you everyone for dialing like tonight.
No worries. Okay, Sherry, you got any last words for Edison?
No, but thanks for coming on. Always happy to talk about payments, and hopefully we'll do more of this. A little bit of a plug, I guess, for those who are in Singapore. If this stuff interests you, we actually are doing like a live event at some point during Token 2049, which is a panel. So if you've seen some of the Asia Crypto Week stuff, it is an invite-only event, so you have to, I think, submit. But if you're interested in learning more about payments and all that stuff, we'll be doing that. So besides that, I think we are in general super excited to have you back on in the future at some point as well at Edison to talk more about payments. But thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, for the event that we are talking about, I already pinned the tweet on the Twitter Spaces. You guys can click there, and the URL should be there for you guys to register. But yeah, thank you, Edison, for your time. Jeff, you got anything to say?
No, thanks, Edison.
Nice.
Look forward to seeing you again.
Sick. Yeah.
Yeah. Have a good day.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Take care.
All right. Good night.